Great.
Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this WiCyS webinar. We're so excited to be joined here with the AWS team as we're talking about innovation driven by a culture of DE&I. So super exciting, very relevant topic. Before we dive into everything, I just want to introduce a little bit about the WiCyS organization. And we are a 501c3 with a mission to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. We have over 5,800 members. I know the slide says 5,700 members, but we've grown a little bit since we updated the slide. And we have representation in over 70 countries. We also have 52 professional affiliates, and professional affiliates are mini WiCyS organizations. They're all throughout Africa, Australia, Canada, France, India, Pakistan, the UK, and throughout the United States. In addition to having specialty affiliates like WiCyS AI, WiCyS Critical Infrastructure, WiCyS Cloud Security, we have one for BISO, one for data privacy and cybersecurity law. LGBTQ plus Pride has an affiliate. We have a WiCyS military affiliate, one for neurodiversity, and so many others. And then we additionally have over 180 student chapters with Microsoft Philanthropies funding a global student chapter initiative for us to reach 23 more countries. So we do all of this and so much more by creating opportunities. And we have an online member forum where all our members can network and connect. We have many different skill development training programs, including the AWS Game Day that's coming up next week. We're super excited about that. That reached full capacity very quickly. So that was, a lovely experience. But we have skill development training programs brought to us by Google, Meta, Bloomberg, by Fortinet. We have Target running out teams, SANS Institute, and so many other key strategic partners that are building out programs for the WiCyS members. Our scholarships, grants, and awards are open right now for the WiCyS 2023 conference that's coming up March 16th through the 18th. And also our call for participation for that conference is open as well, because we want to provide a lot of speaking and media opportunities so our members can be what others can see. And that's the cybersecurity professionals that they are. Our Cyber Talent Emergency Fund is built out for students within the WiCyS org for them to receive emergency funds if they can't pay their rent or their car breaks down. We don't want anything to stop them from continuing in their careers and their education of cybersecurity because we need them out in the workforce. Our Job Board Plus Plus is a place where all our strategic partners, including AWS, recruit from, and then all our members have access to. So they can see the jobs at the many different strategic partner booths 24/7 year-round. We have apprenticeships and internships. We participate in market research. We have leadership summits, leadership series, leadership workshops. We have initiatives for veterans and military spouses. Our speakers bureau is getting relaunched here sometime shortly. And then our mentor-mentee program applications or enrollment, I should say, will be opening up at the beginning of the new year. Right now, we have 850 mentees in the program and 250 mentors. We've designed and developed a curriculum to upskill and uplevel women to get them out into the workforce. All this and more, including our Equity Advocacy Committee, is here to ensure that WiCyS internally as well as externally continues to lead with inclusion, equity, and allyship. So very appropriate for the topic of today's discussion. And we owe all this to WiCyS Strategic Partners. They're the foundation of all things within the org. We have AWS, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Fortinet, Google, Intel, Lockheed Martin, Meta, Microsoft, Optum, Sandia National Labs, and SentinelOne, and so many others. So we encourage you, at the bottom of your screen is an option for you to ask questions. You have these ladies from AWS. They're going to be introducing themselves, and we're going to be going through a panel today. But this is your time to get your questions answered live. So at the bottom of your screen, please plug those questions in. I'll read them out loud, and we will get to them as quickly as possible. And if you haven't done so already, please kindly subscribe to the WiCyS newsletter. You can go to wicys.org, and in the upper right-hand corner, it's there. So with that, here we are, the AWS team. So before we dive into these questions, I just would like to do a quick round of introductions. And Vanessa, we'll start with you.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be here and speak to you today about innovation and DE&I. My name's Vanessa Jacobs. I work for AWS for the past 3 years. It'll be 3 years in October. I have over 20 years experience in cybersecurity as well as IT technology from data center in all the way through product development. And it's a pleasure to speak with you here today. My role at AWS is a senior global security consultant. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vanessa. Sai?
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you all. This topic of DEI is very personal to me, and it's something that I've kind of drive all along, both personally in the personal front as well as my professional front. So excited to be here, share my experience, so share my learnings with you. I'm part of the Amazon Alexa team. I'm a senior privacy officer for Alexa. So it's an exciting time. I used to work on the AWS side for about 3.5 years before I moved to Alexa. And it's been a fun journey. So I would love to share what I've learned. I do have an experience of about 25 plus years in the industry, primarily both in technology as well as in cyber security, governance, risk, compliance, so all along. So it's been a wonderful journey.
That's great. Thank you, Sai. And Amber?
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Pearson. And along with my distinguished panel members, I am also excited as well to be here with you all. This is a passion for me. Right now, I have the role of Head of U.S. Security Engagement within AWS, and it's within the Washington, D.C. area. I lead the Security and Compliance Customer Engagement team, and that team enables customers with regulatory requirements operate their workloads within AWS. So I have a lot of experience in assessment and authorization. That's over 18 years. Prior to AWS, I've been here about 10 months now. But prior to AWS, I was the deputy CISO over within FEMA, and you might see the FEMA in the background a little bit there. And my strategic focus was always driving agency alignment with federal regulations and compliance through workflow innovation and implementation of cybersecurity requirements. And I'm excited to get started.
How wonderful. Well, as the audience could tell that we have some very well experienced ladies from the AWS team on this panel. And again, just a reminder to put your questions at the bottom as we go along. So let's go. Vanessa, Sai, Amber, I'm going to kick it off with the very first question. And it is, what does innovation driven by a culture of DEI mean to you in the field of work you do every day? And so we're going to start that question actually with Sai.
Oh, thanks for the question, Lynn. Appreciate the question. So I think it is very important. We all drive innovation. We use technology to solution for problems that we see on a day-to-day life. But it's important how unbiased we are when we bring these technology solutions to our customers. And that's where I feel the culture of DEI is very important. For example, we are talking about voice recognition systems or voice agents that we have in our day-to-day life. We call a bank, we call a customer service store, and everywhere we call Gap for customer service, and everywhere we have these voice agents that have been automated. And we all have these experiences of either our dialects not being understood, or we have something that we say is not being interpreted right, the numbers we say, primarily because we all come from different areas of experiences, culture, dialects, how we speak, regions that we come from. But when we think about technology and innovation, I think the experience should be the same for all, correct? So that's what we drive when we talk about DEI, being more inclusive, being more, taking the diversity of populations that we work with. How do we kind of generate technology solutions? And not having any biases, how do we kind of create that mission model? How do we create that artificial intelligence behind the customer support systems? So these are great examples of how we can innovate using and being, cognizant of, the DEI aspect that should be brought in, being inclusive of dialects that we speak. Whether I say, because I grew up in India, I might say, let's say, marriage in a certain way versus how it's pronounced here, or how it's said in a Western world, or if somebody who's coming from a non-English speaking country, how would they say that? And that's where technology should be able to be unbiased and being able to provide that experience. And that's what we work for every day. And Alexa is a great example of that, where we continue to innovate and we bring that functionality which is unbiased for everyone.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. When you cultivate that culture of inclusion, like that inclusive space is so critical, because diversity expands from that. All things expand, and it's a where trust is built. And from trust, there's innovation and creativity and, and just a happier workforce and a healthier workforce. And that's all that we want. So, I really appreciate your answer to that, Sai. And I'd love to get Vanessa's viewpoint.
As innovation and diversity and inclusion relates to what I do here at AWS, I could share experience. We have a really good mechanism called writing narratives. If you have a really good idea, you put together a narrative, and then it goes through subsequent approvals very quickly, and you can go for it. So I had the opportunity to build a program called Lives at AWS, and it's primarily for Black, Latino, and Native American startups and small businesses. And as we went into it with a couple of businesses, we discovered some common themes. And one of the common themes was security. I mean, they're wearing so many hats every day that they couldn't find time to pay attention and focus onto their security controls. And
Right.
so I got a chance to help with that. So I created an offering for security for startups and small businesses from a governance perspective, as well as their risk and what compliance, based on what regulatory concerns that they had. And so we piloted it with 2 customers, and it came out really well. But I couldn't have done that without an inclusive team of team members that I had on board in the program within AWS to make that happen. And also true allyship from my leadership, the VP of Global Security Services, Hart Rossman. So that's what I've done every day from a day-to-day perspective. Now, when it comes to my big, large customers, the Fortune 50s or Fortune 10s in some cases, it's really interesting how we're starting to look at inclusiveness a little more closely, as far as respecting each individual's thought and what they bring to the table with our offerings, because not every offering is going to fit every customer, even for a big customer. So it's interesting how we leverage each other's different mindsets and have that inclusive thought to make decisions, better decisions, and more nimbleness with those decisions to create or massage offerings that really align to our customers' business outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice that you kind of very much so hone in on the power of the diversity of thought and tap into that to bring forward the innovation that you're seeking. So wonderful. And so, Amber, how does this resonate with you?
I agree completely with both. And so part of that also is you increase your talent pool. So when we think of DE&I, we tend to think of it in very specific terms, like focusing on gender, race, or religion, but that diversity of background and skill sets, that diversity in thinking, that allows an organization to free up space or create a space where you show up to be your authentic self. And you show up a little differently because now you've established some level of trust in your organization, and people are able, and that's where innovation really happens. You're no longer concerned about getting that right answer, conforming to a specific way of how to do something. And you have that flexibility and that freedom in challenging that status quo and challenging ideas. And I think that's where innovation lies in our everyday.
Love it. Love it. So very good. So why and how do you see DE&I being a key contributing factor in driving innovation? I think we covered a lot of that, but let's dive into that a little bit more. Like, why is DEI that key contributor? How does that work? And so we'll just extend on that. And why don't we start with you, Vanessa?
Oh, I get the prize again. Well, I could attribute it to what I'm working on now. I'm creating some different group of offerings for customers that I can't tell at this time, but I'm so excited about it. And when it comes to diversity, we have this. Everyone on the team that I've put together, I strategically put together this team because they did come from different backgrounds, and they did come from different verticals too. When I say industry verticals, and then they had different tenure. I have one who just started 2 months ago, which is good because it gives a fresh light on to what he thinks the offering would be. And then there's one that has several years with AWS, where he's bringing some of that know-how of how we can get this done in a faster way, and understanding all the mechanisms for us to be successful and bring it to market. And then we also have an individual who comes from a sales background that they're bringing, okay, this is what this audience would like. And, with some sales folks, they bring the customer faster than we're ready for. But so we're trying to truck along to meet their needs, but it would provide us with a good proof of concept. So I'm excited to have this, to share with this customer this new offering and do some of that experimentation. And it's good to fail fast, because then you learn from that. And it's a customer who we're comfortable, we've earned enough trust to do that with. So it's pretty exciting. That's how I'm doing it today, to just dive a little bit deeper on inclusiveness and diversity in terms of innovation and creating these offerings.
I love it. And I love how you put the age in that element as well. At WiCyS, we have a mentor-mentee program, but we often encourage others, and I tweet about it all the time. I love Twitter, but I tweet about it all the time. Anyone over the age of 45 needs to find a mentor under the age of 30. Like that reverse mentoring cycle, that is a powerful diversity of thought. Me being over the age of 45, I don't know the experiences. I've not lived through those experiences of a 28-year-old on our team. And so therefore that reverse mentoring and learning and having that shared experience, just as much as they learn from our expertise, we turn it around and learn from their experiences as being under 30.
And Lynn, I have another experience to just share with everyone. I haven't coded for decades. And so I went on and got a reverse mentor. He's like 25. And, I'm over that 45 limit. I said, I want to learn how to code Python. Well, when I was learning to code in Fortran back in the day, we didn't have these repositories. We didn't have open source where you're sharing code. We had to make code from scratch, from pseudo to the beginning. So, it just opened up a whole new world for me, so now I feel a little bit savvy. I'm on my, on the CLI command line. I'm learning command codes again. I'm pulling stuff down from the GitLab and GitHub. And it kind of made me feel renewed of my, just from a coding ability. So he loves doing stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know your bandwidth is pretty small, like everyone else is. But he said, no, Vanessa, I really enjoy this. And since you have this, you coded in Fortran and COBOL, this would be easy for you. So he understood. And I'm like, oh, thank God. He didn't think I was an idiot for, asking him to, to mentor me on coding again. So it's been fun. I look forward to it every 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then you get that fresh new perspective and new energy brought
Yeah.
into your life. I mean, that is very, very important. So
It's a mental rejuvenation.
it is. Yes. So, Amber, what is your experience with that?
Oh, I absolutely love Vanessa's experiences because I think that just shows that, because I have the similar experience within our current org and AWS. Vanessa talked about narratives a little bit earlier. That's our mechanism, how we promote feedback and how we get folks to the table and to be more inclusive, because we're seeking and being intentional and how and when we ask individuals to come to the table, review these docs with us. Let's share different perspectives. Along with Vanessa, I actually brought in a summer intern and a new hire campus hire. And so getting that fresh perspective of someone straight out of college, and you find that you may have missed critical things in the way you started developing a specific tool. And it just highlights you really need to be very inclusive and look for different backgrounds, look for different technical skill sets. One of the other things is giving equal opportunity for all levels to provide it. One of the biggest or greatest things that I love about the internship and the program, DE&I program for universities and colleges in the DMV area, it allows us to look for different age groups, different skill sets, different college degrees that could provide a variety of backgrounds. So one of the things that we looked at was a marketing degree. While we're looking to innovate these new technology, take these technology advancements in the authorization process, for example, how do we market that? How do we campaign that to our customers? While we're working backwards and being customer obsessed, how are we really going to get after ensuring that we're meeting customer demands and customer needs in that area? So I think you have to be very intentional about bringing everyone to the table and looking for that diverse feedback. And I think that really comes down to better decision making.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And those intentional actions. One time I was at an event and I sat down next to a CISO and he said, I have 35 women on my cybersecurity team. I said, congratulations, you're higher than the industry average. And he said, I said, what are you doing different? And he said, I'm paying attention. And he gave a list of all the intentional actions, including, sponsoring WiCyS, like thinking outside of the box and knowing what it takes to get there and putting those intentional actions in place. And that is, like you said, it's very good decision making based on, your goals, knowing what you want as your outcomes and getting there through those actions. So very good, Amber. And Sai, what are your thoughts on this?
I think I couldn't agree more with all three of y'all and what y'all have given and the perspectives that y'all shared. But what I have learned is a little bit is in the sense that what's pushed me to is to look at even common themes outside the common theme, correct? Like if you're within technology, we never would go to like the marketing major. I would go to an extent where, do we go to other professions, for instance, correct? Like if you're building an app, a music app, and it's about teaching machine learning from a machine learning perspective, you're teaching them how to recognize sounds. So in that case, you would be going to musicians and let's say drummers from across the world, correct? Is that something we normally think about when we do innovations? It's not a common thing that we do, but today we have to look outside that box that you're talking about, and being intentional, like what Amber was saying, correct? So I think that's one thing that's important. Recognition, because as we go more towards automation today, I think it's important for us to understand that people feel very personally about their origins, their ethnicity. Correct. So being correct from that perspective, it's not right to say just because I learned a way of, let's say, a language, because I learned the British English when I grew up. It's not right or wrong, but where I am and where other customers are or where the users are, I have to be sensitive to what their needs are. Correct. So in that case, maybe going back to where our customers are from, or learning that aspect, bringing that in, being inclusive of that. So example would be like, as we kind of automate now everything, like even the religious aspects. For like, I can give you from a perspective of where I come from India, is we have all these Vedic chants that happen, and not everyone today can actually pronounce it because we are not educated in Sanskrit. But if I'm building an app or automating something still to replicate something from home, the people I would look for are those elderly people who actually have the knowledge of the Vedas, correct? I would have never thought of doing certain things that way, 20 years before, when I was in the technology industry and we were trying to solution that. But today I'm forced to stop, think, look around, whether it's going to Mexico and getting the Spanish accent from there, and not assuming the Spanish from the region of Mexico is the same as something that you would probably, go from a Latin American country as such, correct? There are nuances, there are differences, and not assuming that, and being aware. I think becoming more aware of that is more important today as we drive innovation and then bring solution technology to our customers. And that's my journeys learning over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like how you threaded awareness, like having the global awareness, like just being aware of your surroundings and honoring that, and moving forward because of it. So thank you for that. So our third question is, what can we do to consciously introduce DE&I elements as we incorporate and manage technology teams? So, Sai, you take it. Well, wait. Oh, Amber, you take it away. We haven't done you yet.
No problem. Thank you for that question. I see that in a couple of different ways. Hire and develop the best, which is one of the Amazon's leadership principles that I absolutely love. Ensuring that you're just not hiring to meet a quota. You're being intentional in increasing your talent pool that we talked about earlier with diversity, and being inclusive, and making sure that's a focal point for managing your teams. Every employee needs to have that psychological safety, if you will, in the workplace so they can really show up in their authentic selves, which creates a healthy working environment. And again, that leads back to innovation, because now people are challenging ideas, thinking outside the box, being very creative and experimenting a lot more. And then finally, I would say increase employee engagement and trust. I need to be able to see myself at all different levels in an organization. That creates that level of trust with employees. And it allows them to see themselves in leaders, in the middle management, or even junior employees that we kind of talked to earlier. Everyone wants to feel connected and a part of the company itself. And so, again, one of the areas that I love about AWS is affinity groups. And it's where employees can get connected to specific resource groups that, again, align with some of their principles, what they believe in, what they love, and just what they identify with. And so having that opportunity to connect, I think that's where we could be consciously, intentional about incorporating specific areas to increase innovation in our technology teams.
Love it. Thank you, Amber. Sai?
Yeah. So from my side, I would think about it a little, I agree with everything Amber says. And I think those are excellent points for us to get started for inclusion. There are other aspects that I've seen and I think I've been taken back by some of the efforts that have been going on, is, actually taking risk of putting people from outside their professional comfort zones, correct? For example, taking somebody in the business and making them leaders to drive, let's say, security awareness. Because we always look at them from a perspective of saying, hey, you've got the business knowledge, you're a business SME, but helping them to kind of giving them the opportunity to kind of do that cross-functional role, I think helps introduce the DEI element in its true sense, because now we are not bucketing them based on what they know, but helping them understand, hey, you've got some common themes and common skills that you can actually take to drive something that's outside your comfort zone, correct? I think that's a wonderful way to bring inclusion. And when I had led teams, I would, this was a long time ago, I had people reporting globally to me, being aware of simple things like, religious holidays, for instance, and as we are where we are, in Americas, we really don't have a calendar that's so inclusive about holidays across the world. But today's population, we have people working across the world, globally supporting technology, correct? So being sensitive to that, if it's like it's national holiday across the globe, but it's not in US and we still have time from a corporate time, we're all functional, being sensitive to say it's okay, kind of, have them, let them go have their holiday, celebrate with their people and their time and with what is important to them, and make sure as a manager you cover for that, correct? They don't have to feel obligated to come and ask you. But as a manager, if you can step in that role and make it easy for them, correct, by recognizing that that is important to them, or working with the community, this was a long time ago when I was in New York. We had this employee engagement program where we would we would go to elderly homes and bring them on site to take care of our employee kids and interact with them. So, the moms would get time off from the daycare stuff that we had on site, just having the community involvement. So every, component of what we used to do, I think we can take so many examples from that perspective, correct? DEI is not like truly we can find inclusion, diversity in any aspect of our life and bring it in and kind of apply it. So I think those are things that I've enjoyed doing in and helping manage our own teams and, driving what we do today in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you, Sai. Really appreciate that. And Vanessa, what is your perspective?
My perspective is in alignment to Amber and Sai. One of the things that I would like to add is one of our LPs of have backbone, disagree, and commit. Because there are certain situations you're going to have to, kind of push back and call out if you witness someone who's not being aware or empathetic in a nice, decent way, not in a rude way, but in a way that's very respectful. But to do that on a regular basis, because not often people realize that they may have excluded a group of people or shut down a person's thought during a brainstorming session, for example. So that's one of the things that I would say when it comes to managing teams. I've managed teams in the past. That's what I would have liked to see, not as me being their leader, but for them to push back on themselves and say, hey, wait a minute, were you aware of this? Don't just poo-poo my idea and then back to what Sai said, their religious beliefs. I practice Judaism, and people don't think about me, taking the high holidays off, or Rosh Hashanah and the 10 days to Yom Kippur. So that's awareness. And I think I did mention empathy. Empathy is one of the things that I think all leadership can, step the bar higher. Especially, I feel this way due to the pandemic and due to the social unrest and due to all the downstream impacts that it had into our working environment. It was so overwhelming. And I think that when leadership is more empathetic in those time periods, then their employees will earn the trust of their leadership. And that did happen in a lot of cases. And in some cases, some friends and relatives of mine, it didn't happen. So, Lynn, I would say empathy would be something that we can raise the bar on.
Yeah. Empathetic leadership is just definitely skills that everyone shines in and rises together collectively. And it also goes because the empathy is surrounding your teams with trust and especially during very vulnerable times. And so that's definitely a really very valuable point. So thank you for that, Vanessa. All right. So Vanessa, we'll just stay with you and ask question number 4 right off the bat to you.
Oh, wow.
And can you speak about a time in your personal life where being a part of a team that intentional promoted DE&I enabled business through innovation?
Yes, I kind of shared it before, and it was Lives at AWS. And the way it came about, it was right after the murder of George Floyd. And my leadership, who had requested, how does everyone feel? He spoke to me via email and asked, what? No, we talked to each other. So we talked. He called me and he asked, well, what are your thoughts about going on, about what's going on? And I'm like, oh my God, if he really wants to know. I said, I don't want a career limiting experience here, because I was like 2 months here at AWS. So I said, well, can I come back to you and provide what I'm feeling and respond to your question? He said, sure, take all the time you need. And in the middle of the night, that's when I came up with the idea, that innovative idea of Lives at AWS, because it stemmed on how did I get this opportunity? How was I able to go to school, get an education? My parents worked. And it was because that economic ability to have a small business. I come from two to three generations of people who have businesses. My grandfather on my mother's side had his own business, and my father had his own business. So I think that was the common denominator for me and the driver for me to get out there in the working world and to be innovative, so to speak. So I came back to him with that idea, because it goes through the cycle. If you have a means of income, then you can afford housing, you can afford food on the table, you can afford your kids to go to school, right? And you can afford health insurance. So all of it goes into that type of flywheel. And then it really can recreate generational wealth if it keeps going. So that's how it started. And I have that hybrid affinity group. Amber mentioned how affinity groups really are impactful. And it's called the hybrid affinity group because it's an affinity group that is trying to help that underserved demographic of Black, Latino, Native American folks. But at the same time, it's providing adoption incentive to lower the barrier of entry into cloud technology. So we can, if they would like to learn how to get onto AWS, if they like to get some professional services, well, we're providing some incentives to do that. So
Beautiful.
we got rewarded that, the team, and so that's been exciting for us.
That's a wonderful example. So thank you for expanding on that. Very good. And Amber, how about you?
Oh, I absolutely love Vanessa's example and personal experience. So for me, it's translated both in personal and work life. And it's been a pretty easy conversation over the past couple of years, because like Vanessa, I was afforded the opportunity to kind of bring in that conversation, and where you could break down, those racial tensions about social unrest, and have that opportunity and be able to incorporate specific aspects of D&I in those conversations. And what you start to see in these conversations is that when you create that space, that in personal life and at work, people are now walking away telling their family, their friends about the conversation, about what they've learned. And that's that ripple effect. That's when it becomes far reaching. And perhaps that's where change really does happen, because now individuals who are empowered with that knowledge can start challenging the status quo. And then as you start challenging that status quo, you start really getting into systemic change. But yeah, I really love this question, and I love Vanessa's example because it does challenge you to look at your personal life and your work life and see how those two intersect, and the power that you have on the greater good, the world in which we all live in. So, and show how it transcends in both areas.
Great. Thank you, Amber. And Sai.
I think from my perspective, the experience has been where can I bring the change? Intentionally, where can I promote it? So I've always gone out to look for it. I've not had the fortunate experiences of like what Vanessa or Amber's had, where I've owned businesses or anything. We do a small mentorship program that I'm involved with the community, and that's something because it's for the next generation. So I mentor kids from about 6 to about 22, 23 years old. That's where I personally and intentionally have been able to promote it at a much younger age, correct? Because the change that Amber and Vanessa are talking about, I think if we can lay the foundation in our next generation, which I truly believe, I think it's an excellent opportunity there. So actually talking about DEI, how they behave with their peers and at school, how inclusive are they in their conversations when they do small projects, I think is a great start. And that's one way where I've been able to influence the next generation, correct? But at the corporate side, when I have managed teams, I've been part of employee engagement forums that we've put together where we create a safe space for employees across the world, globally, immaterial of whether it's men, women, anyone else as employees can come in and share their experiences, be able to talk about it, talk about how difficult their days have been, what experiences they're having. I think it's very critical when we kind of do that and provide that space. And I think that's one thing that I've been able to enable for my peers, for myself in some cases where I have felt like, I would need somebody to help me out. I think those are great forums. I used to run a lean and I used to run a lean and forum locally outside of work. Those is another way that I have kind of, supported the cause of DEI, where immaterial of where you are in the community and what your role is, what industry you are, be able to come and share some common themes and know that, hey, I'm not the only one going through it, but everyone else around me has similar experiences, and maybe somebody in the forum who's know how to get through that, correct? Be able to share that. So making that common grounds for people is one way of how I have kind of taken DEI into my own personal life.
That's great. And I have to share that WiCyS has put together inclusive language documents, just as part of the education piece. At one point, Vanessa mentioned about allyship, and what does that mean? Well, a lot of times, allies with good intentions don't know the actions or the steps to take into allyship or what that would look like to them. And so it is about educating. And so we try to piece the puzzle together a little bit by putting together inclusive language doc. What is inclusive mentoring? What is creating that space of trust? What extends from that space of trust? So we have all those as resources. But this is really great information, and I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about how has DE&I directly impacted your career and or personal journey. So, Sai, we're going to start with you.
I think from my side, I've become more sensitive, become more aware of how I can manage my interaction with people, both at the personal level as well as at a professional level. This is more inclusive of, how you were talking about the demographics, whether it's children, you're talking about inclusive languages, correct? So I think that's a very critical aspect, but it's just hit me hard over the years to say certain things that I might not be aware of. Like, my intentions may be good, but the way I say certain things or the words that I've used, and I should say both my two young daughters have been my mentors in a long way of educating me on what's current today, what things I can and cannot say, because there are things that, was okay for me to do or say when I grew up, but it's no longer the right thing to say, or the language that we use when we speak with people, it's not appropriate anymore. And for whatever reason, correct, I haven't yet caught up to it. And you have these young children telling me, what to do and what should be said and what should not be said, how it makes a difference, and talking to me about systemic things that we do are and unconscious biases that we have, and how systematically we can change them, right? Because they're more aware of the society from where they're growing up today. And coming from a background of two nations, both from being from India as well as spending about 20 plus years here in the States, I think there's a lot of learning. There is a lot of undoing that I have to do to kind of acknowledge the present circumstances that I'm in, the culture that I'm exposed to. So I think that is something that I've learned both through my career and my personal journey, of being aware of that. Simple things like, in our culture, like we leave shoes when we come into the house, but that may not be something that, people may be privy to, and I should not be getting upset. We have somebody working at our home, but how to kind of politely say that to somebody. These are very simple things in our life, correct? But they do make a big difference in how we interact with people and how we kind of communicate and engage with people. And be more respectful, correct? Our intentions may not be negative, or, but our not being aware, we could be deemed to be seen like that. So I think being aware of that is very important.
Yeah, that's good. And like you even mentioned the unconscious bias. It's all about just being aware that you have unconscious bias.
Correct.
And then make intentional actions, like just the awareness. We all have them, because my experience, and I was born and raised in Chicago, is definitely different than Cy's experience, having the two countries that she has been living in. And so it's just, we all have unconscious bias, being aware of it, and to be able to move forward and better ourselves because of it. So that's part of the education and, threading those intentional actions together. So thank you for sharing that. Amber.
Oh, so like Sai had started earlier about the last question with leading the foundation at an early young age. So a part of my personal journey in terms of DE&I, I really tried to do the same thing in terms of volunteer activities and partnering up with organizations that promote technology and education in underrepresented communities that don't have the same equity and access to technology and resources. So for me, again, it starts at the stage of early youth. Make sure they understand that social responsibility. And like Sai stated, some things I'm still learning because I do have teenagers as well. And so they're getting me hip to, and I honestly just heard that hip is no longer a great term to use, but I'm going to use it today. I'm still getting hip to some of the words, what you can and can't say, and what's just, acceptable. And so again, shaping those minds and being able to develop that at an early age is a great foundation, because these are our next leaders. And I want to make sure they see myself in some of these roles that they're aspiring to be. And so, so I find myself in educating a lot in the youth area. I volunteer with a lot of organizations in the DMV area. I just signed up for a mentorship program in the middle school. I'm rethinking that, because going in the first day, I was like, whoa, this is chaos. But, but yeah, so I really do look to mentorship. I think that's a great avenue to continue to educate and get DEI principles out there at an early age, because again, these are going to be our next generational leaders. And so let's start them off correctly. So
I love it, Amber. And I love how your children keep you honest. And even some younger members on our team, I pitched an idea to our during our staff meeting, and one of our younger staff said, "That's a bit extra." And I said, "Extra awesome?" She was like, "No,
like, no, don't say it.
That's not what that is." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So it's all about being open too. Open.
Right. Yes.
A really great skill set to learn as you advance in your careers, how not only to give feedback, but also receive feedback.
Absolutely.
It is definitely a skill set that we all have to practice, and our children will keep us honest. That's for sure.
Yes.
So, and Vanessa, what are your thoughts with this?
My thoughts in terms of my personal journey and DE&I. I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. And I did not want to go to school at UCLA. If I went to another trip to UCLA, I was just nauseated with UCLA. I wanted to do something different, whether it was to get away from my mom, probably so. And my dad was all for it too, but he wanted me to go to Stanford. But anywho, I wanted to go to the HBCU that my mother had gone to. She was born in Louisiana, so we would go to trips, but I really didn't understand the culture. You think you do, but in California, there's everyone, and it was a diverse neighborhood, and I had that experience. But going to Grambling State University, and also going to a university where I wanted to be in technology, I wanted to be in computer science. I was one out of 5 girls in computer science, and to be told that this is for the guys, and 2, you're taking up their seat when you probably won't even get hired, and this is not for you. Why don't you just go and study teaching? Nope, not gonna have it. And so it was by the grace of my ACT scores that I got in, and it was a constant. It put me in a constant mode of always trying to be better than the guys, being better than everyone, and they pushed that conscious bias on me. So I grew up with conscious bias, and during those times it was conscious bias. And then, I think now it's more unconscious bias, ways of behavior that people have. But it made me feel, and until I got to AWS, I didn't have a label on it. I talked to Amber about this prior to getting prepared for this call. She called it at this orientation conference that we had. The speaker had called it Impostor Syndrome. I'm like, oh my God, I've had this for years. And it was because of that biasness, that conscious biasness I had to always overcome, even throughout the career. Here I am, I'm a woman of color in undergrad of computer science, and constantly have to prove myself, being a leader of leaders and always trying to be perfect. I think women in general, we have that problem of always trying to be perfect. And also, and when we're at the table with a group of men, especially in technology, where people steal our ideas, or they repeat what we said, an idea, and take credit for it. And how do we stop that? So it's that conscious biasness that I have been struggling with for decades. And I think I'm getting a little bit better at it. I hope. And I try to live my life inclusive. I've been blessed to, my husband is white, and even through the 23andMe, he is from German and Welsh background, not a speck in there. And me, I'm just a big quilt, like most of us are of color here in America. And then the Jewishness, he's not Jewish. We go into the synagogue. There is that unconscious biasness that he is the Jew, and he is not. It's me. I did that through Orthodox on my own accord, because it's part of my learning. So I've just always been curious to learn about different cultures, different languages, but that's me. And I have to make sure that I don't have an unconscious bias of those who are comfortable to not be so, open to learning different things, that they're comfortable just where they are. So that's been my personal journey.
I absolutely love it. Very nice. Well, listen, we have like 5.5 more minutes left, and I do have a couple questions for you, but I'd rather tackle the questions from the audience to make sure that their voices are heard. So let's just first go into loving these descriptions that make me feel as though I'm on a psychiatrist's couch. Okay, good. We've covered it. You're good. Imposter syndrome is normal. Everyone has it.
Yes.
There's allyship that's out there. We all have to strengthen our allyships. There's microaggressions. There's unconscious bias. There's all sorts of, but leading with empathy, giving good feedback, receiving feedback. All these things help make everything move forward in a nice direction. So I agree with whoever put that in the comments that it was excellent descriptors of everything. So thank you, ladies. Another question that came in is great points about intentionality, reverse mentoring, marketing, cross professions, and openness. What advice do you have for a successful 15 plus healthcare administrator in cardiovascular that is trying to cross into the cybersecurity community? I have a proven track record of successfully nurturing a DEI culture amidst wearable technology and telehealth. I feel I could bring my expertise as a leader and wonder how I can encourage an employer to support my diversification. So, who would like to tackle that question?
Send me your resume.
Yeah,
I can't guarantee anything, but we're looking at, there's some opportunity out there, I'm sure, at AWS. So it's worth the try, and stay diligent and resilient. Still knocking those doors, no matter how many rejections you get. Continue, but definitely give me your resume.
I would say, use your skills, your core skills of being able to market DEI and bring technology in the healthcare industry. There are many companies like Amazon, Google, where every vertical has a role to play, correct? So I think you should be targeting those kind of organization, but using your skills to learn and say, hey, this is what I bring to the table. Because what you've done in the 15 years is awesome. It's not easy to kind of market telehealthcare. I think until the pandemic came, I don't think people really realized what telehealth was, because it was there in before. But we've redone the whole aspect of what it is. And you have that leverage for yourself, correct? So bringing that as your skills, like whether it's organizational skills, leading a team, you can use it in any technology, whether it is not just cybersecurity, correct? So you can actually put that foot forward by saying, hey, these are my core skills, and this is how I've managed teams. This is what I can bring to the table. And like, cybersecurity skills are coachable. I mean, all three of us here on the table will tell you that, and including Lynn will tell you that it's something that we can train people on. But what we can't train or what we can't bring to the table is soft skills. Are you a great leader? Are you an empathetic leader? Are you a visionary to see, the core business needs? And you seem to have all of that, correct? So using that to piggyback on, I think would be a great way to go forward.
And then your knowledge of HIPAA, and PHI data is pretty huge. That's one thing you can really market and boost yourself upon, because you actually lived it, did it. Yeah. And that's a lot to the table.
Yeah, and I'll just add really quickly, everything that Cy and Vanessa said here, spot on. Focus on your core principle, a core skill set. And then, like Vanessa said, you have that HIPAA experience, whether you realize it or not. You have aspects of security. Just make sure you explore that, add that to your resume, and make sure you speak to those specific skills.
Love it. Thank you. All right. What suggestions do you have to overcome prejudices against diversity, especially age, race, gender, etc., when seeking a job?
I would suggest think outside the box, because I know of somebody who I haven't posted on LinkedIn saying, hey, this is my skill, and go after it. Just think of new ways of it, because I think I would not say there is no prejudice. I think all of us have seen that in some form or the other along our life and professional journeys. But I think thinking outside the box, being creative and having a laugh about it and saying, hey, what else can I bring to the table? This is my core strength. And see that uniqueness that you have in you, correct? I think will help bring it. Networking is another key thing that I would say is very, very critical for you to know who can help you, who can be that person who can lead you on.
Yeah, I would say definitely networking is key, and make sure you do the research and make sure you find an organization that fits your cultural needs. That has always been very important for me throughout my career. I learned very early in my career to make sure I focused on that before I came into the door. On another Bright talk, I'll talk about that experience later another time. But yeah, making sure you focus on the right companies. I think networking is key, and getting on Bright Talks like this so you can see what's happening in organizations such as AWS.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, ladies, we are at time. The time has flown by. We could just keep on going for another hour. But the system's going to be shutting us down. So we do have to wrap it up. And I appreciate all your thoughtful insight, your stories that you shared, and just the information that you're leaving the audience with so that they could walk away and show up as a better version of themselves because of this information. So thank you all for sharing your afternoon with me. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. And of course, to AWS being a strong strategic partner and conference sponsor and like the foundation of the WiCyS organization. We just love and appreciate you all. And so have a great rest of your afternoon, and we will sync up again, hopefully sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It was wonderful being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.